Morning, everyone. Well, what we know now is that this storm was the second largest snowstorm in terms of accumulation in the history of this city, going back to when records were first kept in 1869, so almost a century and a half. Second largest snowstorm we've ever had, and we missed setting that record by literally 0.1 inch. So this one is a cautionary tale to all of us, a storm that the day before on Friday was still being projected at 8 to 12 inches, ends up coming in close to 27 inches when all was said and done. So it is an example to us of the fact that we have to be prepared for storms that move very fast, that evolve very rapidly, and that can end up being a lot bigger than originally predicted. The good news is that everyone who works for the city did an outstanding job. Starting with the folks here at the Office of Emergency Management, I want to thank them for the excellent leadership and coordination they provided for all of our agencies all over the city. And it is so important to recognize that not only did our public workers do a great job, but the people of New York City heeded the travel ban, respected the fact that the only way to help our first responders and our sanitation workers to do their job was to get out of the way. So the travel ban was very effective and allowed us to do the work in the afternoon, evening, and overnight that we needed to do to start the process of keeping the city clear. We did have to enforce the travel ban. Chief O'Neill will talk about the details of that. But again, overwhelmingly, people heeded it. I think the NYPD checkpoints and the NYPD activity out in the streets showing people that there were consequences certainly helped a lot. We want to remind people right now that it is still dangerous out there. So a couple messages we want to get across today. First of all, do not drive if you don't have to, unless it's really urgent. We want people to stay off the streets. We want people to keep their cars where they're parked. It is very important to recognize there's a lot of work being done to get the city up and running for Monday. We need people off the streets for their own safety. We need people off the streets for the safety of others. We need them off the streets so that sanitation can clear the streets. We need you off the streets so our first responders have the freedom to get to emergencies. To make it easier on all New Yorkers to keep their cars parked, we are canceling alternate side parking for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So for the whole work week, alternate side parking will be suspended. So therefore, I say to my fellow New Yorkers, and again, until just a couple of years ago, I drove my own car and looked for my own parking regularly in my neighborhood in Brooklyn, so I understand how people have to think about alternate side. Now that you know alternate side is canceled for the week, leave your car where it is. Don't try and shovel it out today unless you have an emergency or something truly urgent. Leave your car where it is. We are expecting warmer temperatures through the week. Mother Nature brought us the snow. Let Mother Nature melt the snow and get it out of the way. But what we do not want is for New Yorkers to start shoveling out their cars and putting all the snow in the middle of the street. That is only going to make things worse. It's going to make it harder on sanitation to clear the streets they need to clear. It's going to make it harder on our emergency vehicles. So I'm trying to give people a good option here. Leave your car where it is. Therefore, you don't need to shovel, and you don't need to put that snow in the middle of the street. If anyone has a good reason for moving their car, please only shovel out the minimum amount of snow necessary and don't put it in the street. Move it towards the sidewalk. Obviously, don't block the sidewalk, but keep it right next to the car on the sidewalk. So people have to be really clear about helping. All the city workers are working so hard and working nonstop to keep us all safe. Help them to do their job. Do not put the snow back in the street. And another caution is walking around. A lot of people are out walking around. It's a beautiful day. A lot of people are out with their kids, going to parks, going sledding. That's great, but be careful. I went today driving around. I left Gracie. Went through parts Upper East Side, Upper West Side, then I went out to Queens. I was in Long Island City, Astoria, Sunnyside, Woodside, came down to Brooklyn and went around through Fort Greene, came over here to OEM. What I saw was a lot of people walking in the streets. Now, I understand why. A lot of the sidewalks have not yet been cleared, but people have to be very careful. When you're walking in the streets, remember, traffic is starting up again, a lot of emergency vehicles around. Keep an eye out. Don't walk in the streets if you don't have to. If you do, you have to be very, very vigilant. And I'd like to see people not use the streets as much as they are now, because I don't want to see people in harm's way. Obviously, also, especially with young children, be very, very careful if you're walking in the street. Let me give you some updates related to the plowing situation. And I'll say at the outset, Department of Sanitation has done an absolutely outstanding job. There's no two ways about it. We've now, again, seen storm is literally the second worst in our history, could have this close from being the first worst, biggest we've ever had. Sanitation did an extraordinary job, even though the storm came early and was in some ways obviously greater than anyone expected. And the accumulation was at times as much as 2 or 3 inches an hour. Sanitation gets very high marks for their overall effort. I will say I want to see more in Queens in particular. And I'm certainly not satisfied with the condition of some of the roads in some of our neighborhoods in Queens. I went around, as I said, Woodside and Sunnyside, definitely more work to be done, and that's going to be a high point of focus today. Other neighborhoods in Queens that we have much more work to do in: Ridgewood, East Elmhurst, Jackson Heights, Corona. So, in fact, given these challenges, the Sanitation Department is moving equipment out of Manhattan, Brooklyn, and the Bronx and into Queens. So we have about 60 pieces of equipment so far that have been transferred from sanitation garages that have done a good job and have covered a lot of ground, getting them out into areas of Queens where the need is greatest. 850 plows now at work in Queens. So we got more work to do. And look, I want to say to people in all 5 boroughs, there's always going to be some places with challenges. We're trying to identify each and every one of them. We know there's a few places in the Bronx, a few places in Staten Island. We definitely have more work to do. But our central focus right now is on Queens, where we have neighborhoods we just have to do a lot more and quickly. And that's particularly true for our tertiary streets. So I think what I'm seeing, and having talked to Commissioner Garcia, I would say sanitation did an outstanding, extraordinary job on our major highways, our primary streets. I was all over those neighborhoods, as I said, literally blacktop. Even though we just saw almost 27 inches of snow, blacktop already. That's how good the plowing job was. On secondaries, I think they've been strong. Secondary streets all over the city. Generally speaking, with a few exceptions, at least twice they've been plowed, in some cases more. Tertiary streets have been plowed at least once all over the city. But again, we have a lot of tertiary streets with a lot more work to do, and we know we have to do that quickly. That's why we want to give sanitation the freedom to do that work. And what gets in their way is when people are out in the streets driving around, or when people put the snow from their car right in the middle of the street. So again, I know people are thinking today, particularly in Queens, they want their streets cleared. You can help us to get those streets clear. Stay off the streets. Don't put snow in the middle of the streets. Let sanitation do their work. Reinforcements are coming intensely into Queens so we can get that work done. Again, the overall effort by city employees, outstanding. Sanitation leading the way. I want to thank all of our first responders, our firefighters, our EMS workers, our police did an amazing job. Everyone, outstanding job. Also want to thank agencies that were part of this effort, don't get as much attention, deserve a lot of praise as well. Department of Transportation, Department of Correction. Their employees jumped into the effort, did a great job helping us to clear the way. So really a wonderful team effort by city employees all over the city. So on the coastal situation, I know there was a lot of concern coming in about whether it'd be flooding. We did not have major flooding, thank God. The precautionary efforts by the Parks Department, I want to thank everyone at the Parks Department. Their efforts to put preventative measures in place were outstanding. Some of you saw me perhaps go up on the berm at Coney Island. It was a wonderful experience because when you're up on that berm 10 feet high, they hadn't been there 2 days earlier. It's a reminder, thank you, Commissioner Silver, how great the work is of the Parks Department putting those barriers into place, and that was another reason why we didn't have the flooding. So that's been a good situation. I saw it in Coney Island. I was out in Staten Island as well. I think that precautionary effort worked well, and we were glad to say that the tidal surges were very, very minimal, as predicted. Again, want to give you a couple other updates. Want everyone pleased to emphasize alternate side canceled Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. so people can leave their cars in place. In terms of MTA, we've been in constant touch with the MTA last night and this morning. The governor and I have been coordinating. So MTA's done a great job. I commend the governor and the state and the MTA. They've gotten their service back. Of course, they kept the underground service going the whole way through, which was pivotal. 7 a.m. bus service started to get restored. 9 a.m. some of the above-ground subways started to get restored. Now, we know this is going to take well into the day for service to get back more to normal, and of course, it's weekend service. But everyone's goal is to get this city as close to as normal as possible for the Monday morning rush hour, and I think the MTA is well on their way to that. Again, I said the warmer weather is predicted for the coming days. There is not snow in any of the upcoming forecasts, so that gives us the hope that in addition to the exceptional efforts of the sanitation department, that the sun and a little bit warmer temperatures will help us get rid of a lot of this snow. Now, in terms of people shoveling, as I said, do not put snow in the street, but I want to offer a further caution. We have to be clear, people have to be very clear about not putting themselves in danger through snow shoveling. We lost 3 people yesterday, very, very sadly. 3 people died because of snow shoveling, because we assume, we're still waiting for details, but we obviously assume it may have been heart attacks in each case. People who are not in a position to exert themselves should not let someone else in your family, let a neighbor, hire a kid who's going around shoveling, but don't snow shovel if you're not up to it. We don't want to lose anyone more, and our hearts and prayers, of course, go out to the families who lost those 3 good people. We have been doing intense outreach, as usual, in our Code Blue status for homeless individuals. Last night, 131 people were brought in, 130 voluntary, 1 involuntary. So Code Blue effort continues very strong. We thank the Department of Homeless Services and all of the organizations who work with it for their excellent outreach efforts getting people into shelter. Want to continue to urge New Yorkers, look out for your neighbors. Look out for anyone, either a senior citizen or anyone with a disability who might need help. Check in on them. See if they need any help. See if they need help shoveling their sidewalk. Again, when we talk about shoveling, please special focus on keeping hydrants clear. And if anyone's having a heat or hot water problem, call 311. We need to make sure those problems are resolved. There's still some trouble, obviously, with repair crews getting around the city today, but we want to know where the problems are so we can get to them as quickly as possible. A couple words in Spanish, and I'd like you to hear from some of my colleagues. You're going to hear from the Deputy Chancellor of Schools in a moment. Let me just say up front, school will be open on Monday. Tomorrow, school will be open. We know for our neighbors in Queens that there are still, again, streets that are not in shape, that we have to get in shape in the course of this day. So we have less than 24 hours until the school buses start running at around 4 or 5 in the morning. We know that's the deadline. Sanitation Department is up to it, and we're going to move every resource we need to make sure that will be done effectively. But school will be open across the city tomorrow. In Spanish, la tormenta ha pasado, pero la limpieza continúa. Los autos ya pueden circular por las calles, pero les pedimos que no salgan si no es necesario. Tengan cuidado en las cercas. Las calles están muy resbalosas. Nuestros trabajadores de sanidad pública han hecho un trabajo extraordinario y siguen limpiando las calles para que mañana todos estemos listos. Si no tienen calefacción o agua caliente, por favor llamen al 311. Cuiden a sus vecinos, en especial los ancianos y discapacitados. Y llamen al 911 solo si es una emergencia. With that, I'd like to bring forward our first Deputy Commissioner for the Office of Emergency Management. Again, they've done a great job coordinating this effort. Deputy Commissioner Calvin Drayton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, everyone. We continue to keep our EOC open as we get into heavily engaged in the cleanup effort here. Our CICs, or Citywide Interagency Coordinators, have been deployed citywide, also helping to coordinate the cleanup efforts. We have our Community Emergency Response Team volunteers that have been deployed to start cleaning out the hydrants to assist the fire department, along with the New York City service volunteers who are also doing that. If you do have some issues regarding shoveling, call 311 and we'll get New York City services out there to assist you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, the woman of the hour, and again, commend her and her extraordinary team for this great effort, Sanitation Commissioner Catherine Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As everyone knows, it was an extraordinarily difficult storm for the sanitation department to fight, particularly late yesterday afternoon when we were seeing 2 to 3 inches an hour. And very hard to keep up with. We've made great efforts to keep everything moving, and I want to thank the employees of the department. I know they're making 110% effort. As the mayor said, our primary streets and our highways look really, really good. The one concern we have is refreezing on the overnight, so we will be paying attention to that. We know we have more work to do in our secondary and tertiary streets. We do not believe that we have won this fight yet and know that we will have days and days still of work to do. In addition to the 850 plows and equipment that is in Queens now, we still have plows and front-end loaders across the city. There are areas of the city that we will start to pull the snow out and pile it so that we can haul it away. There's just nowhere to put it in some areas that are very, very tight. We also brought in almost 700 laborers to start dealing with our bus stops and our crosswalks, as well as using our bobcats. We have about 50 of them. Digging out, I just want to reiterate, digging out cars, there is so much material on just one car. If we've gotten that street open and you move that snow into the middle of the street, a passenger car will get stuck. I saw this happening this morning when I was out in different areas in Queens and Brooklyn, and cars really thought that they could get through, and even that additional pile of snow made it so that they got stuck, and that's going to slow us down. I do want to thank people for following the travel ban. It was extraordinarily helpful to the department as we made our way around the city, and I think in certain areas it's really made it so that we can move faster. I mean, I just want to say we are just a little bit over 12 hours from when the storm stopped and really gave us an opportunity to start fully clearing, which is an accomplishment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now talking about our roads all over the city, our Transportation Commissioner, Polly Trottenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I also want to thank the men and women of DOT who've been hard at work, and in some ways our work is just picking up. We're continuing to help sanitation with plowing, and now we're out tackling pedestrian overpasses. We'll have our crews out looking at lights and signals to see where there was damage, and if you see a light or signal that's out, please call or email 311. The Staten Island Ferry is now back on a regular schedule, and I particularly want to praise the men and women who run the ferry, who kept service running all night long. Bus shelters, as the commissioner mentioned, we're continuing to dig those out. We've got about a third of those done. And right now, City Bike is not yet dug out. They probably will not be dug out today, but stay tuned. Hopefully in the next day or two, you can get back on your bikes.
Thank you very much. Now, again, our firefighters and our EMTs did an incredible job dealing with a lot of challenges in the last day. I want to particularly thank Commissioner Nigro for what his team did, and welcome our Fire Commissioner, Dan Nigro.
Well, as my colleagues up here, I am also equally proud of the men and women of the fire department for what they've done. Yesterday, as the snow was falling, we responded to 6,000 emergencies in the city, including many medical emergencies. This morning, a fourth alarm fire in which we had no civilian injuries. Yesterday, there was a water rescue in Rockaway. Members entered the water to pull someone out. It was a very challenging day for us, but we had staffed up sufficiently and met that challenge. With our hydrants, we ask, there are over 100,000 hydrants in the city. Of course, members of the department can't do it alone, so I ask those of you who are physically able to please shovel out those hydrants in front of your homes or businesses so we can see them and put them to good use.
Thank you very much again. Thanks as well to NYPD, which did a great job keeping people safe in general and a great job enforcing the travel ban, and that's part of why we're in decent shape today in terms of clearing our roads. Chief of Department Jimmy O'Neill.
Hey, good morning, everyone. So first of all, I'd like to thank all the police officers and civilians that worked during the blizzard. And I'd especially like to thank the 9/11 operators and dispatchers for the terrific job that they did. So first, let me talk about the travel ban enforcement. We had 25 summonses that were written throughout the city. We had 8 in Manhattan, 5 in Brooklyn, 11 in the Bronx, and 1 in Staten Island. So just moving back to Brooklyn, we had an individual that made a series of bad decisions. I'm counting 5. First of all, he decided to drive after the ban was put in place. Then he decided to speed. And then he decided to blow through 2 red lights. And then last but not least, he decided to drink before he did all of this. So we locked him up for DWI also. We had 37 tow truck removals, 367 removals by tow truck. Our 911 call volume was down 5%. Today so far it's down 37%. And there were 484 reported vehicle accidents throughout the city. Our homeless outreach efforts continued. We had 68 people voluntarily removed to shelters, 19 to hospitals, and 72 additional contracts. So once again, I'd like to thank the brave men and women of the New York City Police Department.
Thank you. Finally, want to bring up our Deputy Schools Chancellor, Elizabeth Rose.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the mayor said, schools will be open tomorrow. We do encourage staff, students to leave extra time to travel to schools. Please use mass transit wherever possible. It will be more difficult to park near schools because of the snow. And finally, I'd like to thank all of the custodial staff who were out yesterday clearing the sidewalks in front of schools, shoveling snow, and who are out there today doing the same so that we'll be ready for school tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. I do want to emphasize that point. Even though sanitation department is doing a very strong job of getting the city ready for Monday, and again, our entire focus is on the Monday morning rush hour and getting our school buses running Monday morning. Let's remember, everything will be slower than usual. As Elizabeth said, there will not be as much parking, obviously, as usual, because those parking spaces are now occupied by 27 inches of snow. So people should leave more time getting around on Monday, leave earlier, use mass transit to the maximum extent possible. All right, we're going to take questions on the storm. Yes, sir.
2 points. The first one, Garrison Beach, which is, obviously an isolated community in Brooklyn. There were many streets there that were only hit once, and residents wrote us about that. And then secondly, I just want to talk about there were last year 21,000 tickets handed out to people who didn't shovel their walk in front of their homes. Can you talk about when that'll start again after the snow?
Let me say on the first point that, again, on our tertiary streets in particular, we know we have a lot more work to do, particularly in Queens, but all over the city. I think what's clear is sanitation job one is getting our highways and our primary streets open, and then they work their way down. They could not have done a better job on the primary streets and the highways. They've got a lot more work to do on the secondaries, but especially the tertiaries, where, again, in most cases, it's only been one pass so far. So certainly in terms of Garrison Beach, we're going to be showing a lot of attention there now as the day progresses, and we know we have a lot of work there to do. In terms of the ticketing and all and that protocol, Catherine, why don't you talk about the time frames?
Certainly, as many of you know, the basic rule of thumb is that you're supposed to have shoveled about 4 hours after the last flake. We are actually currently using our enforcement agents, though, to help us around our salt domes and manage the traffic in and out. And our focus in enforcement will be people who are moving large amounts of snow, say off of parking lots, into the street. Because that is really hampering us. Some of the private parking lots are building up new mountains in the middle of the street, so that will be our enforcement focus.
Thank you. And look, I want to make sure that the different messages we're given come together. It is really important not to shovel snow into the street. It is really important to make sure that hydrants are clear. Again, I say as a homeowner myself, we know we got to get our sidewalks clear so people can get around. We don't want people who are not physically able to try to shovel. So, the important thing is to sort of look at that in terms of hierarchy. Public safety first. Don't block the streets with snow. Make sure the hydrants are clear. Don't endanger your own life by shoveling. But we do want all homeowners and business owners to start the work of getting their sidewalks clear. The enforcement will move up over time. But really, it should be common sense. You don't want your sidewalk blocked. It's not good for anyone. It's not good for your neighbors. It's not good for your customers. And obviously, if it goes on too long, you're going to get a ticket And so we want people to just be responsible and think about their neighbors and getting their sidewalks clear in the course of today. Okay, let's take other questions. Erin.
With regard to the Code Blue and the homeless individuals being brought in, did you use a policy that anyone who was encountered would have to be moved in? I know you said there was only one involuntary, but...
Yeah, policy is the exact same. Let me explain again. As Bill Bratton said at the press conference on January 4th, that the policy is essentially the same since he was the transit police chief in 1990. So a quarter century, there really hasn't been a change on this basic point. NYPD, if they confront someone who is a danger to others or themselves, has the right to bring them in, period. And that's something NYPD has exercised, again, for a quarter century. The Code Blue status means we have an immense outreach effort out there between NYPD and homeless services and the nonprofits that do outreach work with homeless services. What we find is the vast majority of people, you've seen the numbers now over the course of the last few weeks, the vast majority come in voluntarily. I think with last night's numbers, we're now pushing 700 or more people, 700, 800 people who have come in over the last few weeks. Only, I think, somewhere like 10 or 12 people had to be brought in involuntarily. But we will not hesitate to take action if someone needs to be brought in involuntarily. Our bigger goal, Erin, is to get the homeless folks who live on the street off the streets permanently. And it is very important, if we're going to do that, that we convince them that there's a better way than living on the streets. We don't want to get them in for one day and send them back out. We actually want to make a permanent change. So that's really job one.
Mayor, you mentioned Queens and you want to see more done in Queens. Queens has been a snow removal challenge going back to Mayor Lindsay. It happened during Mayor Bloomberg's administration. Is there a strategic tactic that isn't employed, or is it simply a reality of the size of Queens? What is it that causes the problem and that residents say every time they forget about Queens?
No, we haven't forgotten about Queens, obviously. Queens had an immense amount of energy and resources applied to it from the beginning. So Catherine will speak to some details, but I really want to push back on the subtext of this question. Every storm is different. And what happened in 1969 or 2010 is not the same as this storm. Every storm affects different parts of the city differently. That's one of the points. You get different snowfall levels in different parts of the city, and we have to recognize it. Queens is a very big borough. Even different parts of Queens will have different snowfall levels. But one of the things that was not done well enough in the past was moving assets around. So what Commissioner Garcia did earlier was, seeing that she had a strong situation in Manhattan and in much of Brooklyn and the Bronx, she started pulling resources off those boroughs and sending them to Queens. That's why we have 60 more pieces of equipment in Queens now. Grand total of 850 plows being applied to Queens as we speak, which is a lot. And we'll keep doing that as needed. So to the credit of Commissioner Garcia and the Sanitation Department, I think they have a more agile strategy now where they move resources around, thinking about one city, not just a sanitation district or a borough, but where in the city is the need greatest. And so that, I think, is going to make a big difference. If I'm living in the neighborhoods I mentioned, like the ones I saw, the streets I saw in Sunnyside or Woodside, I'm not going to be happy this morning. I'm not going to be satisfied this morning. But I can tell you this much: give us the rest of this day, and we're going to make a very, very big impact on those neighborhoods. And help us. I say to all of those who live, all of my fellow New Yorkers who live in Woodside, Sunnyside, and the other neighborhoods in Queens that are experiencing trouble, help us. We are going to send you a lot more equipment. Help sanitation by not putting snow in the middle of the street. Help sanitation by not trying to drive. Stay out of the way so they can do their job, and we will get the job done. And we're helping drivers by saying, you do not need to move your car. Leave your car where it is for the whole week. You'll be fine. You will not be ticketed. Alternate side is suspended. Just leave your car. If you need to get around, use mass transit and other ways. But if we do this right, we can clear out Queens today. But unfortunately, if everyone tries to move their car, if everyone puts snow in the middle of the street, they're actually going to be making it worse for themselves. Let Sanitation Commissioner add a little bit there.
Certainly Queens has had a tough time over the last 24 hours. Queens obviously is the largest borough by lane miles, by an order of magnitude. It also saw more snow. than the other boroughs did. JFK had higher snowfall totals than Central Park did. But we are really focused on addressing the issues. I mean, some of those tertiary streets are very small. We know we need to get in there with specialized equipment, and we want to make sure that we are giving the same service to Queens as we did to all the other boroughs. Thank you.
Have enough of the specialized equipment for those types of streets?
So we do have enough equipment, and we're bringing in more. We've actually hired front-end loaders who arrived this morning to help us dig out.
Okay, other questions? Yes.
Just on the first part, I'd like to tell the Commissioner, DOT, directly that I saw light out at West 4th and Broadway.
Okay.
So
You're a
there's
good
that.
citizen. Yeah, West 4th, I'll remind you, West 4th and Broadway. West 4th and Broadway.
Does that make sense? Does that, yeah, he lives in the neighborhood.
Don't doubt yourself, it's
And
fine.
then, and then secondly, I noticed.
Are you
night shows-
saying where Tower Records used to be?
No, it's like.
Where are you saying?
Oh man,
That
I'm
West
bad at
3rd.
this. It's like
West
where
3rd,
the,
West
the
4th.
train station, Broadway and Lafayette. Sorry.
Broadway and Lafayette.
My
Houston.
apologies.
Houston.
Houston, there we go.
Houston and Broadway.
I just moved to the neighborhood.
Okay, Houston and Broadway. Light out.
I noticed
Holly's going to fix it right now.
I noticed NYCHA's chair is not here,
Yeah.
and we've gotten a lot of responses from our viewers who live in NYCHA developments, and we've seen the pictures, and the snow is piled up, and
Right.
elderly people can't get out of their doors. Can you tell us about the response by NYCHA?
Right, well, look, with well over 2 feet of snow, again, in terms of any residential complexes, it will take time to dig that out. There's no two ways about it. But we're very focused on the Housing Authority and making sure they have the resources they need to dig out. Obviously, the leadership of NYCHA has been part of this whole emergency planning and response effort. So we'll double down on that today. I think I would put it in the same category as any other area we have more work to do. Today is the day that we're going to really focus on clearing things up so people can be back to as much as possible to normal tomorrow morning for the rush hour. Yes.
Commissioner Garcia talked about, huge piles of snow having to be moved from whatever area they're piled up in. Where is that snow being taken ultimately?
We have multiple snowfield locations around the city. So, for example, in Lower Manhattan, we use one of the slips to start piling snow there, and then we bring in big melters, and we start melting that snow. And we have 36 melters across the city.
Okay, yes.
Given the increased preparation by city agencies like the Parks Department, I wonder if the city is seeing a greater cost to prepare for these snowstorms over the long term?
Well, I'll say a couple of things. Look, we are in the age of extreme weather, and I think we have to recognize we're going to get these big storms in unpredictable ways in the future. This second biggest snowstorm in New York City history, the one that was predicted last year that hit farther to the east would have been exactly like this, basically. So I think this is the shape of things to come, which means we're going to put even more warnings in place going forward. We're going to tell people preemptively to get ready to shut their businesses and do other things in advance, because now, I mean, you look at this, that went from 8 to 12 inches predicted on Friday to 27 inches. It's a cautionary tale for us about how we're going to have to deal with things in the future. But in terms of the budget, if what we're going to see is relatively few storms but very big ones, we can handle that. I mean, obviously, this is the first of the season. We had a very substantial snow budget. We'll certainly be within that now. My hope is that we're not going to see many more storms like this year. If we get 1 or 2 big ones a year, we can handle it. But right now, we're certainly within our snow budget. Yes?
Decision, I don't know if the Deputy Chancellor has a statistic for this. Any sense of what percentage of teachers drive to schools and what that might do to attempting to get things open tomorrow?
Well, I want to remind all our teachers that, of course, as the Deputy Chancellor said, parking is going to be very difficult. So I really want to urge people to use mass transit, carpool if you can, not assume it's going to be normal, because it just isn't. Things are going to be slower, and there's going to be much less available parking. So teachers should leave extra time coming in and find as much as possible mass transit and other means. Do you have anything you want to add? Okay. Anything else? Last call for questions. Going once, going twice. Thanks, everyone. Oh, thank you. Did you have to wait that long? Really?
Do you have any message for the kids who might be thinking, if 26 inches doesn't close the school, what am I going to need? 35?
I told you. I used to have an in-house unpaid lobbyist named Dante de Blasio, who the hint of snow was calling for a snow day. Like an inch of snow, he wanted a snow day. So I certainly understand kids who want a snow day. But look, thank God this storm started late Friday, early Saturday. The timing, a very tough situation for the city and a lot of work to do, but the timing couldn't have been better in terms of our ability to respond because it was exactly at the beginning of the weekend. It let us put out all of our equipment the right way without people going to work, coming back from work, without having the millions of people come into the city during the work days here. So we were blessed by that timing, despite the huge number, the huge amount of snow. Because people are heeding the warnings and because sanitation department did such a great job, we will be up and running with school tomorrow. So I'm sorry to my younger constituents that their dream will not come true this time. But if we ever feel we have a situation where school cannot be open safely, that's when we close down school, not this time. Thanks, everyone.